Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 392 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I am Jason Evans. I'm here as your host this week. I'm joined by Donald Wine. Sam Klein could not make it. Sam's got some busy stuff going on in his life right now. He's really sorry, but he has left the two of us to carry the ball forward without him. Donald, how you doing?
Doing good. I'm in LA for the women's national team games coming up this week, starting tomorrow, actually. So I'm looking at SoFi Stadium outside my window, which is a great, nice little sight, but glad to be here. But I'm glad, even more glad that we pulled out that win last night.
Amen. And I'm going to confess something to the audience out there. This is our second take. This is our second attempt at this. Donald and I did an entire podcast, a good 45 minutes. It was great. It was banger. We were on fire, and I forgot to record it.
It was all heat checks too, all of them.
Oh, it was great stuff. So hopefully we will recreate the magic now here for you. But if this is coming to you a little bit late, it's because we recorded it earlier. And then, well, actually, we didn't record it earlier. We did it earlier and we didn't record it. It was just for the two of us. It was just you and me, man. We were the ones enjoying it.
Practice makes perfect.
All right, let's get to the game. And the Blue Devils defeated Wake Forest in a game that was way too close for comfort, 76-74. Felt like it was going to be another Duke blowout. Felt like, the Blue Devils were going to take care of business at home in a way they haven't been much lately. They had a 19-point lead at one point in the second half, and then all that went away very quickly. Wake Forest came back very, very fast. And before we get to discussing the game, as we always do, we have to do our headlines. Donald, I will come to you first. What is your headline from this contest?
So my headline is Duke hangs on by a halo.
I like it. The halo, you explained it to me earlier, but explain it to the audience. What do you mean by the halo?
Yeah, so basically the cylinder, like a football halo where you can't enter that area. It preludes the final shot of the game where the cylinder was breached, and because of that, we were able to tip dunk and win the game.
I like it. I like it a lot. That is definitely the story of what happened at the end. My headline, you know how much we love alliteration. Here we go. Get ready for it. Duke's desperation dunk drops Demon Deacons. Oh, yeah. I just did 6 Ds in a row, my friend. And to some extent, defense, D, was the story of the game for Duke.
You had to enunciate every one of those Ds, too.
Yes. Yeah. Say that fast. Duke's desperation dunks drops Demon Deacons. Say that 5 times fast. You're better than I am.
I'm not going to try. I'm not even going to try.
Hey, we got a ton of headline submissions from listeners. We love the fact that you guys are reaching out to us at DBR Podcast at gmail.com and sending us your headlines, your comments. It's great. We're not going to read all of those on the air. Not that they weren't all fabulous, but they weren't all fabulous. But we're going to read 2 of them that were really good. The first one comes from Ronald Pereira. Ronald wrote, Duke barely hangs on in the second half with K missing. But I have to explain that. He didn't actually write the word Duke. He wrote DU space E. So visually, if it was a newspaper headline, when he says K missing, the K is missing from Duke. So Ronald gets points for being clever. But the best one, Andrew Bloom. I mean, this guy absolutely rocked it. Andrew Bloom's headline is Duke exorcises demons in baptism by Shire. Baptism by Shire. That's some clever stuff there.
That's the best one we've received so far. Like, we've gotten a lot of great ones over the last couple of weeks since we asked people to start sending them. That was the best one we've received so far. So hats off to that, man.
Yeah, Andrew Bloom has set the standard, everybody. Now you all have to see if you can match it. So let's get to talking about the game. And we're going to do the good stuff first. And the first big good thing is Coach K is going to be fine, everybody. In the first half, Coach K was not doing well. At halftime, he was checked out and they said, he's ill and he should not come out and coach the second half. There were folks from the training staff, Duke Medical, who were checking on him. John Shire said in the post game, and of course, because of that, John Shire took over coaching the team in the second half. He said in the post game that Coach K is feeling fine because Duke got the win. But we know that Coach K was still in the building by the end of the game, that he spoke to the team after the game. So hopefully it seems like things aren't too bad there for Coach K, and we would expect him to be back on the sidelines very soon. And good to see John Shire. John Shire said this was the first time he got to coach in front of the real Cameron Crazies and get to really feel the impact of the crowd on a team that he was in charge of, which was great experience for him.
Yeah, and first of all, I think we all agree. We hope Coach K is fine and well. I know there were people saying at the game that he was being tended to during the first half, but the fact that he was able to talk to the players after the game, and that it seems like it was more just a precautionary, let's hold you out for a little while. I think that's good. So hopefully he's doing better today. And of course, the rest of the season, we're going to need Coach down the line. But hats off to John Shire and the coaching staff for stepping up in his absence and doing that on the fly, because it's not like they predicted at halftime, hey, we're going to do this. And hats off to the team. I mean, the team responded very well in the first part of that second half by coming out, and they were playing very good basketball, inspired basketball, to make sure that, it was a good ride, because as we know, winning doesn't cure all ills, but it cures a lot of them. I mean, you're not as hurt the next morning after a victory. It's just science.
Amen. Exactly. All right, Donald. So let's start with the real good stuff. What do you got for me? I suspect you're going to begin with the big man.
Oh, yes. Big Mark Williams. Again, one of the most efficient players in college basketball right now. Honestly, between us and between all of you out there listening, at this point, he should be easily the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC, probably up there nationally. First team All ACC should be in consideration at this point, just given by how he's played on both ends of the floor, and he did it a lot last night. He has, has increased his game. It's not just all dunks, but on the other end, I know he was only credited with one block, but it feels like he altered 15 others that he's not going to get credit.
It's always
for.
That way, isn't it?
Yeah, his defensive presence is there. And, we were talking about this a little bit in the last couple of episodes about how when he goes up for a block, it opens himself up for someone else to come behind him and get an offensive rebound. Well, he led the team in rebounds too. He had a double-double. He had 10 rebounds. So the fact that he was still going up to alter shots, but still being able to close out defenders and get their offensive borders and get the rebounds and go the other way. And then on the offensive end, a lot of those trips, he was rewarded at the end by getting the ball and being able to slam it home. So I love what I'm seeing from this kid, and he's only getting better game by game.
You talked about the dunks, but the thing that impressed me about Mark Williams is he is showing more and more confidence in his post moves. He had a little sky hook at one point. He had a little baseline jumper that he almost took. It almost looked like he threw it kind of with two hands. It wasn't like the greatest looking form, but it went in. But he's really, like I say, he's really showing a lot more confidence in his ability to finish around the basket and in the lane. And I want to talk a little bit more about his defense, because this was a game where Wake tried to bring him away from the basket. Dallas Walton, who played a lot of center for Wake Forest, 7-footer, was going outside and taking 3-pointers and trying to draw Mark Williams out of the lane so that Mark Williams wouldn't be able to protect the rim. Wake knew that was a huge part of what Duke tries to do on defense. The other day, Wake Forest lost to Miami, and in that game, Dallas Walton didn't take a single 3-pointer. Against Duke, he took 7. But I want to credit Mark Williams, because he was able to disturb Dallas Walton, not let Dallas Walton just shoot from the perimeter constantly, while also getting back and being on defense in the lane and stopping Wake from driving to the hole. I thought that was really impressive on Mark's part. It was advanced defense. And then the other thing I wanted to mention about Mark was, he played 26 minutes this game, which is the most he's played in the past 7 games. I would love it if Duke could figure out a way to consistently get Mark Williams 26, 28, maybe even 30 minutes sometimes, because there's no question about it. Duke is a better team when Mark Williams is in the game. Theo John is an outstanding backup big man, one of the best backup big men in the country. I am clear on that. But Mark Williams is another level, and I want us to see if we can find a way to play him a little bit more.
Increasing those minutes while also maintaining the level of efficiency that he's been demonstrating. I mean,
absolutely.
As we mentioned, last night he went 8 for 11. he had the worst output that he's had in 2 weeks, going 8 for 11. He missed 3 shots. He missed 3 shots all of last week. He missed 3 shots last night. But again, adding those minutes while keeping that efficiency the same is what we like to see. And he did that last night and then some, because again, he's affecting the game at both ends of the floor.
Hey, and as long as we're talking about Mark Williams, we have to discuss the final play, the game-winning tip-in.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah. So Ben Swain on Twitter. And by the way, folks, if you don't follow Ben Swain on Twitter, I'm not sure you're a Duke fan. Dude is just outstanding. He's both very observational and also very funny and insightful. He had a tweet that I think sums up this play so beautifully, the game-winning tip by Mark Williams. He said, "I've never seen a play look so obviously illegal in real time and then so obviously legal on replay." It was kind of amazing to me because I felt exactly the same. I saw it and I was like, oh, for sure, that's goaltending. It's basket interference. And then you saw the replay and Mark had, in fact, waited long enough for the ball to come out of the rim before he tapped it back in and slammed it home and gave the Blue Devils the victory.
So I think for me, I obviously, watched the game with some Blue Devil colored eyes, but when it first happened, I was like, no, absolutely not. That was in, that counts. And I saw the ref on the other side immediately wave it off. And I'm like doing the whole, like, oh, he couldn't see it. He's out of, and we'll talk about the refs because at that point I was done with the refs. I had nothing more to say to them. But when we saw the first replay, I was like, okay, we're good. We're if they don't do this and give this to us, then we should just call them the rest of the season. But it went in, it counted, and we were able to get the victory.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the refs later, definitely. But before we get to that, we're still on the good stuff. And the next thing I want to do is I want to move over one position, power forward. Paolo Banchero, I thought, had a really interesting game for him because he struggled. I mean, look, he didn't score in the first half. He was clearly struggling with his shot. But I love the way Paolo figured out other ways to impact this game. He had some really advanced, he had 6 assists, and some of them were really advanced passing moves, just smart ball relocation. I wish Sam was here talking to us because Sam has talked extensively about how much he wants Paolo to find his teammates better and make better passes. This was outstanding on Paolo Banchero's part. And then the other thing was his defense down the stretch. Jake LaRavia is an outstanding basketball player, and Wake Forest was running their offense through Jake LaRavia. And in the final 4 minutes, when it was really a game, Paolo Banchero played some of his best defense of the entire season. He forced LaRavia into bad shots. He forced LaRavia into turnovers. Paolo had that unbelievable block shot with about 3 minutes to go. That was, just an incredible play. I think it's real simple. And I haven't said this at all year. There's no way Duke wins this game without Paolo Banchero playing defense the way he did. For him to do that at winning time, to me, was a real tip of the cap to him.
I will talk about him a little bit in the bad, but I will say he had a tremendous game last night because he's learning how to impact the game in other ways other than just scoring. When his scoring is not there, and we've seen it, he's been in a scoring route the past couple of weeks. He's been able last night to be able to affect the game in other areas. He had the assists, he had the rebounds, he affecting shots as well on the other end of the floor. And like you said, playing defense, I think that is the confidence that he needs to know to say, hey, even if the ball's not going in for me, or even if I'm not getting my touches on offense, I can still figure out a way to affect the game. And I will say that we're going to move another position over. Wendell Moore, Mr. 10-5-5, got 10-5-5 last night because, again, even though on the offensive end, he wasn't as efficient as he normally is, or we've come to expect from him, he has affected the game in other areas, namely rebounding and distributing the ball through assists.
And defense. I want to talk about Wendell's defense because Alondas Williams, front runner for ACC Player of the Year, was pressured into a terrible first half. And that was mostly Wendell Moore. There was some Trevor Keels, some AJ Griffin, but for the most part, it was Wendell Moore guarding Alondas Williams. Alondas ended up with 4 turnovers in this game. When Duke beat Wake, about a month ago, Alondas had 7 turnovers. That's because Duke makes it hard for him to make things easy for his teammates. And that is a huge part of Duke's success in this game. Yeah, the other thing I want to talk about really quick, and it relates to Wendell Moore, and I just mentioned Trevor Keels and Paolo Banchero, is Duke's shot selection. This has been something that I've been talking about constantly, Donald, as you know. And I look at Bart Torvik on his website, he tracks mid-range shots. And I hate mid-range shots. People who listen to our podcast know this. Torvik has been tracking Duke's mid-range shots. And in this game, Duke took 15 mid-range, jumpers. I'd kind of like it if we were a few less than that, but they hit 7 out of 15. And what that says to me is they were taking the right kind of mid-range shots. If Duke keeps our mid-rangers to the mid-teens, not getting up into the 20s, if we hit better than 40% of those mid-range shots, which are the worst shots on the floor, that is a really good thing. And for Wendell Moore, Paolo Banchero, and Trevor Keels to have had a game where they shot a combined 9 for 30, I'm going to repeat that, our 3 primary shot creators, Wendell, Paolo, Trevor, were 9 for 30. For them to have not taken a bunch of more bad shots, I think is a great thing. Even though they didn't shoot well, for the most part, they were not taking just really bad mid-range shots. And I can live with that. And they figured out other ways to help Duke win in a game where they weren't filling it up the way they usually are.
And one of the ways that they figured out how to affect the game was spreading the ball around and making sure everyone was getting inside the action. I think the best play of the game was the play like late in the first half where the ball was moving around.
Yeah.
And everyone basically got the ball 2 or 3 times and it ended up in the corner to Jeremy Roach, who hits a wide open 3. That's the basketball we're looking for, getting a lot of assists, making sure the ball movement was there. I think we had 17 assists on, 26 made baskets. So that's the range you want to be in, where you're getting everybody active. And again, it's a very easy way for someone to get involved in the offense without actually putting the ball in the net. So even with the scoring ruts that we've had from some of these players, they are making sure that other players are getting the ball. And it led to a lot of open threes. Jeremy Roach had a couple in the first half. AJ Griffin had 3 or 4, I want to say, in the first half, where he was just wide open. And all I had to do is figure out how many times he wanted to dribble before he shot it. Just great ball movement from Duke last night.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Jeremy Roach. My last thing I have in the good is I did want to shout out Jeremy Roach, because this is a guy that I've been banging on a lot lately. And he has not been playing well. It's been a couple of weeks since we saw Jeremy Roach have a good game for Duke. And he really had a good game in this game. As we expected, as we predicted on the preview, Jeremy Roach went back to the bench. Trevor Keels moved back into the starting lineup. And rather than pout, rather than not play well, Jeremy Roach responds by going to the bench with his best game in the past couple of weeks, especially in the first half. Really confident. I mean, like, how crazy is that? Dude gets sent to the bench and gets more confident. I was shocked to see it. And that confidence, mostly showed itself in the first half. But I want to point out in the second half, when Wake was raining threes, when Wake was making their big comeback, Jeremy Roach had a play where he took the ball in the lane, went to the hole. Now, he was guarded by like 3 different Wake Forest players. I'm not sure it was the greatest shot I've ever seen a Duke player take, but he took it with confidence. He stemmed the tide and stopped that big run by Wake Forest. It was a hugely important basket from Jeremy Roach. And if he can really embrace this role, which is a lesser role than what he's had, I think it's a really good thing for Duke and really important that we get a little bit of a punch from him when he's in the game.
I really love his character. I'll just say this about everything. It's very hard for someone, it's very understandable for somebody to pout when they're in the starting lineup, then they're going to the bench, then they go to the starting lineup and they go back to the bench. He's been embracing every single role as an opportunity for him to succeed in that new role. So I really like that, he didn't take it as a demotion, and I don't think it should have been a demotion. It was more of a, hey, here's your role on this team now. You're going to do this from the bench. Or at least starting on the bench. And I think he embraces that role, as well as anyone I've seen. So hats off to Jeremy Roach for just embracing these new opportunities as they come about and being versatile and just being flexible in the sense of responding very, very well whenever that new opportunity presents itself.
All right, Donald, are we done with the good? Time to get to the bad?
Let's go with the bad.
All right, I'm going to let you lead it off. What's your first item? What's the first thing you saw that you're like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Well, so for me, I go back to Paolo Banchero because while I think he had a good game, obviously he's in a scoring rut. And I don't think that this is necessarily a huge bad, but it's concerning in the sense that I want to see a renewed focus to get him on the scoreboard through making shots, getting active in the offense through scoring and being the dominant player we saw in the early part of the season. He's in a scoring Right. And that happens from time to time. I like that last night he was able to take that and make an impact in other areas on the floor. But I think the best version of Duke involves Paolo Banchero being a focal point in the offense, being the go-to guy when it comes to scoring, and him just being his dominant self. And he hasn't shown that in the last couple of weeks. I'm hoping that we're able to see that progress and use the confidence that he got from the other areas of his game and use that going forward to help on the offensive end, because I think the only major question for Duke is, when crunch time comes down to it, who's going to be the guy? And most people thought this season Paolo Banchero was going to be the guy when it comes to getting clutch buckets or getting buckets down the stretch. We've seen him take over games. I want to see him go back to that.
So I wanted to talk very quickly about Trevor Keels, who really struggled from the field. Trevor's been playing great lately and gets put back into the starting lineup and promptly goes back into a funk. He's 1 for 7 on this game, but and that's bad. I think part of it is that Wake Forest is really big. I mean, and not only is Wake a big team, but they went bigger than usual in this game. I think they recognized that their size could bother Duke at the rim. And so they were quite often playing 4 guys who were 6'8" or taller and 3 guys who were 6'10" or taller, who were all just packed into the middle to prevent Duke from getting, looks at the rim. And Trevor Keels really struggled finishing in the lane. Despite all of that, my Trevor Keels bad is tinged with a piece of good, which is that I said he was 1 for 7. The only shot he hit was a massive, huge 3-pointer with 6 minutes left. Duke was only up 2 points. Wake had come almost all the way back, and Duke desperately needed a basket. And Trevor Keels brought the ball down and just, on his own, off the dribble, on the move, nailed a 3-pointer, no problems at all. I don't know that, again, like I said about Jeremy Roach's shot earlier, I don't know that it was the best shot. If he'd missed it, I would have been freaking out, but he made it. Shows a lot of guts, shows a lot of confidence. So as much as I thought Trevor Keels is in the bad column, I wanted to mention that little piece of it that's good. And by the way, he did that, sort of just after Wake Forest had an incredible run. And I guess this is part of the bad. Wake scored 15 points on 6 possessions. Whew, that ain't easy to do. And they did it in less than 3 minutes. They put on a show. They were on fire. And it's in the bad section for me because I need Duke to figure out a way to get a stop. I need Duke to figure out a way to get someone to the line, to do something to slow another team down when they're making a comeback. We've seen this too much from the Blue Devils. They can't continue to do this kind of thing where they let teams back in the game when they should be putting their foot on the throat and closing the game out.
Yeah, I think that was also my major bad as well, is that we were up 19 and we literally gave it all back and had something where at the end we once again had Duke fans going, oh no, we had a lead inside the last minute and we've given it away. But I will say this, we actually won the game last night, which is something that we haven't done the last couple of times. So I like that we have the confidence where guys were saying, hey, we had a close game. We had a scoring rut and we pulled it off still. It took a tip dunk with 0.4 seconds left, but I think that confidence is what's going to help the next time, because then when guys say, hey, we're in a close game, they will have the confidence to know that they can overcome that. They probably needed that. So I really like that the team responded to that, but we got to get that under control. We can't give up 19-point leads in the second half.
Okay. So this is going to take me to my last 2 things. And the first one is there's a whole lot of stupid going on at the end of that game. There was just not smart ball play. And it went both ways.
3 teams. Yeah. 3 teams. Duke, Wake, and we'll talk about the third team in a second.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. But so for Wake Forest, with 2 minutes left, I think they were down 2 points at the time. They called timeout. And immediately out of that timeout, Jake Laravia takes 2 dribbles and then throws the ball out of bounds. It was unbelievable. It was a gift to Duke. But it's unbelievable to me that out of a timeout, Wake couldn't even get into their offense. But the real stupid to me was on the part of the Blue Devils. I mentioned earlier, Paolo Banchero had that absolutely incredible block shot. Trevor Keels then saves the ball. Equally great play. And he saves it to AJ Griffin. There was about 3 minutes to go in the game. Duke had a lead. And AJ Griffin comes down. He's the only guy on offense. There's no one else down there for Duke. and AJ takes an incredibly ill-advised three-pointer. No one else is there. It's early in the shot clock. And then by miracle of miracles, AJ somehow gets the rebound, which I don't know how. Like, there were 4 Wake guys and no one from Duke. I don't know how AJ got his own rebound on this bad three-pointer that he took, but he got the rebound and he promptly turned it over. So that was the first stupid thing that happened. Then the next stupid thing was Trevor Keels, who completely ignored John Shire wanting him to call timeout. There was 1 minute left. Duke was up 4. And I was counting the seconds, Donald. If Trevor Keels just dribbles the ball around and doesn't even take a shot, Duke's going to win this game because there's just not enough time left for Wake Forest to do anything. And I think John Shire wanted to tell the guys that. He was like, look, hey. So he's trying to call timeout. Instead, Trevor Keels drives to the basket, tries to throw a pass to Mark Williams that he overthrows Mark. How hard is it to overthrow Mark Williams with 7'6" wingspan and can jump through the roof? But he overthrows Mark Williams. And so in a span of a few seconds, rather than Duke running clock, Wake is suddenly going the other direction to get a slam dunk, and suddenly the game is very, very much in jeopardy. Those were just stupid, stupid plays. And the last one, I don't know, it's not as much stupid as it is like, I can't believe that Duke did it, was Wendell Moore committing the backcourt violation. Yes, he was pushed into the backcourt, but he shouldn't have put himself in that spot, and his teammates shouldn't have allowed him to get in that spot. They need to recognize that Wake Forest is double teaming and help bail Wendell out, because Wendell had no place else to go. And Donald, you know what's happening now. This leads me into the referees. Do you want to talk about this stuff first? Yeah, talk about this stuff first.
Before we get to the referees, I want to quickly go to the Wendell Moore play, because I think this is where fundamentals get lost. Fundamentals always get lost in crunch time. And the fundamental play there's 3 things that I think went awry. 1, you don't dribble where the sideline or in this case, the backcourt line becomes another defender, right? So you don't dribble towards the defenders. 2, you don't dribble into a double team. And 3, if you see a guy that has the ball and your team is in trouble, you go to the pass, you clap out, you yell for the ball, and you get it where at least if they get the ball to you, at least you can reset the play, or you at least have 3 options. You always talk about the triple threat, always want to be in that position. And Wendell Moore eliminated all of those, all those threats by dribbling right into the double team, right in the corner, and then relying on the referees, which I know we're about to talk about. At that time, you had no reason to suspect that they would give you the benefit of the doubt in that, because they had, at that point, we'd thrown up our hands and said we're done with them. So I think you have to get away from the danger. And if you see a guy that's on your team that's in danger, you go to it and you get the ball from him and you restart the play.
All right. We're going to do it here, Donald. Time to talk about the refs. And I hate complaining about the refs. I think it's unseemly, especially in a game that you won. But the final 4 or 5 minutes of this game contained some of the worst officiating I've ever seen. And so we're going to play a little game. I'm going to give you 4 atrocious, horrible, terrible calls by the referees. You're going to tell me which one is worse, and you can comment on any of them that you want. Play number 1 is, we just discussed it, Wendell Moore going into the backcourt. And really what happened was he didn't dribble the ball into the backcourt. He was pushed there. He was blocked into the backcourt by the Wake Forest defense. On a play like that, I know the defenders are allowed to have their space, but they're not allowed to push you someplace you don't want to go. So the refs, of course, didn't call anything, and they just called a turnover as opposed to calling a foul. That's number 1. Number 2, Mark Williams tipped dunk at the very end, which at first the referees called as basket interference. We're looking at the horrible calls. On the replay, it's clear. They're dead wrong about that one. I don't think that one's that bad, but I'm going to put it in the category. So that's number 2. Number 3, when Mark Williams goes up to block the last shot by Alondas Williams. Mark Williams is under the basket. He is in vertical position. He goes straight up in the air. Alondas Williams jumps into him. Mark blocks the shot, and they called a foul on Mark. And then number 4, the technical foul, the double technicals that they call on Mark Williams and what's his name? Kadeem C, for Wake Forest. Mark Williams walks over to help out his teammate. He touches Kadeem C as he walks by. Kadeem C pushes Mark Williams away, and they called double technicals. So, Donald, those are the 4 atrocious, ridiculous calls made by the refs in the final 4 minutes of this game. Which one was the worst?
I will say the only play that I thought was correct, at least in how they did it, was the tip dunk where they initially waved it off, because you can't review it if it is ruled a basket at that point. If it is they can waive it off and then review it, and that triggered the review. So at least that gave them a chance to say, oh yes, it actually did go in, as opposed to if for some reason it hadn't been a legal play, they wouldn't have been able to overturn it at that point. So
all right, so they get a pass on that one. They're going to pass.
Get a pass on that one. I'm gonna give you credit, but we'll get a pass. But it's definitely the double technical. That was absolutely just terrible, because the problem with it was it took Mark Williams, it made him be less aggressive, because he has a technical foul, he has an extra personal foul on there, and he did nothing wrong. He literally did nothing wrong. And so all the other things that he had to do, he had to be less aggressive. And I think that changed the courses of the game, because that's part of his game, is being aggressive. It's being demonstrative. And he couldn't do any of those things, because if he got another technical, he'd be out of the game, and we would then really be in trouble. So that's the one that really boggles my mind. That was the worst call of the night.
Hey, so really quick, we're done with the bad, I think. I just want to very quickly note the ACC standings, because we're at a point in the schedule, a point in the season where we need to talk about the standings after each and every game. It's so important, and it's so close. That win by Duke has eliminated Wake Forest from the ACC race, and let me explain why. Even though not mathematically, but effectively they're eliminated. Wake now goes to 10-6 in the ACC. Duke is 12-3. Duke obviously has beaten Wake twice, so we've got the tiebreaker on them. There's no way Wake Forest is catching Duke if Wake's 10-6 and Duke is 12-3 with a tiebreaker. But Duke fans, I want you to continue to pay attention to Wake Forest, because this weekend they play Notre Dame. They host Notre Dame. It's a game at Wake. Demon Deacons, rest up and have a good game, please. We need you to beat Notre Dame. And by the way, even though Wake's only 10-6, they've got a very favorable schedule coming home. They played a really tough schedule so far. I think there's every reason to expect that Wake's going to win. I hope they win all their remaining games, but at the most they maybe lose one of these remaining games. I think Wake is in really good shape coming down in the ACC schedule, and we need their help to take care of Notre Dame this Saturday. Speaking of Saturday, Duke will be playing Florida State. We're going to have a very quick preview of what to expect on our second matchup with the Seminoles right after this. All right, we're back, and it's time to talk about Florida State. And the story with Florida State is how different they are today from the team that beat Duke just a few weeks ago. Actually, it was about a month ago. When they beat Duke, they were 49th in the country on Ken Pom. After they beat the Blue Devils, they were in the top 50. Today, they're 102. This team has fallen more than 50 spots in Ken Pom in the past few weeks. And by the way, Bart Torvik, who I talk about a lot, he's another person like Ken Pomeroy who does advanced stats, advanced metrics. Bart Torvik's site allows you to sort teams' rankings, teams' results by dates, by date ranges. So I went ahead and I sorted how Florida State and Duke have done since the Florida State game, since the game Duke lost in Tallahassee. Since that game, Duke's been the number 3 team in the country. We've been playing great basketball, aside from that Virginia game. But even with that Virginia game, we're number 3 in the country. Florida State, since they beat Duke, is number 167. And the reason they have been so bad is because of injuries. Malik Osborne, their best player, has missed their past 6 games. He's out for the season. He's done. He will not play against Duke. Their latest game, they're missing Caleb Mills and Anthony Polite. Those 2 guys with Malik Osborne are 3 of their 4 top scorers. They've been absolutely devastated by injuries. No one knows who's going to play against Duke this weekend. Donald, tell me more about how bad Wake has been lately. I'm sorry, not Wake, Florida State. Florida State, yeah.
Florida State, yeah. So they're 14-11 in overall and 7-8 in the ACC. But since we last played them about a month ago, they beat North Florida and then Miami, which was that epic battle where Miami was down 26 points or something and came all the way back and just lost by 1. That was a foreshadowing for the rest of what they've been doing so far, because they lost 6 in a row. They only broke that losing streak just yesterday against Clemson, winning by 1 point. So they're in a really precarious position right now, because they're trying to get back to the top half of the ACC and they're just not doing it. I will say, when we go back to the game on January 18th, when we did play them, there's a couple of things that people probably thought stood out to that. One, this is the game where Paolo Banchero in the second half did really touch the ball for the first 15 minutes and then just was dominant the last 10 minutes of the game, because that went to overtime. We eventually lost by 1. We did not take care of the basketball in that game. We had 15 turnovers and Florida State only had 5. And again, in a 1-point game, those turnovers were a lot of missed opportunities to take shots that would have meant the difference in the game. And also rebounding. We weren't really good at rebounding. I know Florida State is now missing some guys, but this is the key here. If we can get back, we're a better rebounding team now than we were a month ago. And they are missing a lot of key guys that were involved in a lot of that rebounding. So I think that's a major key there. And also, once again, taking care of the basketball. We can make threes, that's great, but taking care of the basketball is the key to beating Florida State. And as always, shout out to Leonard Hamilton, our favorite non-Duke head coach of the pod.
Yep, we love the Ham man. Hey, Sam's not here, so I want to really quickly talk about a couple players that you need to be on the lookout for on Florida State. I mentioned that, they're missing Osborne and Mills and Polite. The guy who's stepped up, the guy who's taking a lot more shots, seeing a lot more minutes, is five-star freshman Matthew Cleveland from here in Atlanta, Georgia. Matthew Cleveland has scored in double digits in 5 past 6 games, and he's doing it, by the way, by taking the ball hard to the basket. This is a guy, he doesn't shoot a lot of threes. This is a guy who just goes downhill at you in a really, really big way. But he's been pretty inefficient. He's only hitting about a third of his shots. So one of the reasons Florida State has been struggling is that Matthew Cleveland's taking a lot of shots, but he's not hitting a lot of shots. That's a problem for them. The other guy I want to talk about is John Butler, 7'1" freshman who was awesome against Duke. He was raining threes down on the Blue Devils, played great defense. He blocked the last shot that Duke had to win the game. He scored 14 points in that game against Duke a month ago. He has not done anything like that. Since that game, he has been a very, very pedestrian kind of player. In their past 4 games, he's had a total of 15 points. He scored 14 points against us, 15 points in their past 4 games. John Butler in their past 4 games, 1 of 11 on 3-pointers. Remember how he was raining them down on Duke? So this Florida State team has really slipped a lot. They are still a very good shot blocking team. They're still a team that gets a ton of steals. They're like one of the top 10, top 15 steal teams in the country, but there's not much else that they're doing well these days. And they're terrible at defending the 3-point line. They allow their opponents to hit better than 40%. This could be a game where AJ Griffin really goes off. And the last thing to mention is that even though they're a good offensive rebounding team, they're a poor defensive rebounding team. And that could be a place where Duke takes advantage of Florida State. We need to bury these guys. Ken Pomeroy says Duke's going to win this game by 16 points. That's what his computers say. I want Duke to have a comfortable victory at home. We need to get back to having the Cameron mojo.
Yeah, and we need to keep moving the ball around because last time we were able to get, I believe, 20 assists on 26 made baskets. So we were actually moving the ball around, and I think that's going to help with the 3-ball situation. If we can get open shots like we've been doing lately and knock those down, Florida State's going to have a long day.
That's going to do it for us here on podcast number 392. Actually, it's 392A or
392.2.
Yeah, 392.2. Exactly. That's what it is. The second version of me and Donald talking about these games. I hope it seemed natural and calm and cool and everything. Hey, folks, we need you to keep writing to us. We love when we get those emails. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Leave us nice reviews. We love those things. We want you to do those things for us. We are missing Sam, but Donald and I were still here. And that's going to do it for this edition of the DBR podcast. If there's no major news, we'll be back over the weekend after the game against Florida State. Until then, he's Donald, I'm Jason, and this is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.